I bid you welcome. Listen to them. Children of the night. What music they make.
Well, it's a marvelous night for a moon dance with the stars up above in your eyes. A fantabulous night to make romance beneath the cover of October skies. And all the leaves on the trees are falling to the sound of the breezes that blow. And I'm trying to plead to the calling of your heartstrings that play soft and low. You know the night's magic seems to whisper and hush. You know the soft moonlight seems to shine in your blush. Well, I wanna
Hello everyone, I am Zazubar, and welcome to a special edition of ZGC, well not really monthly reviews, but just the ZGC episode. With me, of course, I have my creepy, fog-ridden friends, Gorizard.
Children of the night. I am not the children of the night, okay?
What music they make.
I am not the children of the night.
Alright, well, now that this video is completely derailed, with me, of course, I have my good friends, Gorizard. Gorizard, say hi, or quote a Universal movie.
I'm back.
That wasn't a Universal movie, but alright. Adam, say hi.
Death is only a part of what awaits you.
Indeed. Okay. So, as I've been advertising on the channel for a couple weeks now, this episode of ZGC Monthly Reviews is going to be a spotlight on Universal's classic monster movies. Now, the three of us are all huge Universal monster fans, and it seemed only fitting that we should talk about, analyze, and just overall give our feelings on kind of the major Universal monster movies. And the big thing I wanted to focus on with this video was to analyze the legacy that the Universal monsters have had, because one thing I've been noticing is that even if people who have never seen these movies before, they know the monsters' names. And I think that's interesting. Like, the other day, I was talking to my cousin, who is in no way, shape, or form a film fan, or she has never seen a movie older than 1975. I pulled out like a couple of toys of the Universal monsters, and she knew every single one of their names. She knew the Wolfman, she knew the Creature from the Black Lagoon. I'm like, how do you know that? And she's like, I don't know. It's just, the thing is that these movies have become so deep-rooted into our culture that we don't even know where they came from anymore. Or if we do, we don't really think about it that much. We just think of them as they are. And that's really interesting to me, and that's really why I wanted to do this video, to analyze how that happened, and just overall the monsters in their films in general. So, should be fun. What do you guys think?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah is right. Alright, so the first thing I wanted to do was just to outline the movies we're going to be talking about. We're going to, of course, be talking about the original 1931 version of Dracula, which is the film that started the whole thing. Then we're going to be talking about the film that came out the same year, Frankenstein. And of course, for each film, we'll talk about the franchise that came afterwards. Like, we'll talk about Bride of Frankenstein, Dracula's Daughter, Son of Dracula. Then we're going to get into the 1941 film, The Wolfman. And then we're going to get into, well, through The Wolfman, we're going to get into, like, the house of films, which are kind of the movies that cemented these monsters as being in the same universe. And then we're going to wrap it all up. We'll wrap up this part of the discussion with our thoughts on the Creature from the Black Lagoon, which, despite being released after the cycle of classic monsters ended, it's still considered to be part of that pool of monsters. So we're going to be talking about his film as well.
We're leaving out Phantom of the Opera?
Yes. Only because I didn't really think it was part of Universal's main pool.
Fuck, okay.
You can, no, talk about it if you want to. So, that was released in 1942, right?
25.
Okay, so
No. You're thinking of the Lon Chaney version.
Yeah, we're talking about the Raines one or the
Todd Raines version.
Okay, all right. So, Adam, why don't you get into that when we're done with the Wolfman, because that's a connected film, so you can give your thoughts on it then. How's that sound?
Because I love that version of Phantom of the Opera.
Okay, so Adam's going to give his thoughts on that film as well. Now, you might have noticed that I left out The Mummy, and the reason why, the Boris Karloff version, and that was because I meant to watch it today, but didn't get the chance, and it's been way too long since I've seen that film to comment on it, so we're not going to get into it.
It's not overly good. You guys just need to watch the Hammers version of that movie, and you're all set. The Universal movie isn't very good.
Yeah, the thing is that it's basically a total ripoff of Dracula.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the big thing. But otherwise, we're going to start to get into the Universal monsters. But the first thing I think we should do is to talk about our nostalgia for them. So, do you guys remember the first time you saw the Universal movies, or just like some childhood experiences you had with them? Do you guys remember any that you can share with our listeners?
I do. Absolutely.
All right, Adam, why don't you go ahead?
My first experience with actually any of these movies was actually Abbott and Costello Meet the Wolfman, or Meet Frankenstein, or whatever the hell. Which one was it called?
Yeah, that one. Me too.
Yeah, but I just remember the one that I have the most nostalgia for is the first Frankenstein movie, and I rented it on DVD from the movie gallery before it went out of business, and I wore out that tape. I watched it constantly. It was short, it was simple, and it kept my attention going. And that and King Kong started my fascination with older movies. So I have a lot of nostalgia for that one, for Frankenstein in particular. Dracula, I tried to watch it when I was a kid, but I got so bored with it, I only got about halfway through it, and I stopped watching it. Yeah. And I still have the same issue with it now. So that movie's not very nostalgic for me. The Wolfman isn't very nostalgic for me. I watched it a couple times when I was a kid, but it bored me when I was a kid. And I want to smack that little dumb fat fuck in the face now, because that The Wolfman is amazing. It's not my favorite one out of the Universal horror movies, but that one's definitely right up there. But out of all of them, probably the most nostalgic movie out of the Universal movies is Creature from the Black Lagoon, and it is my favorite one out of this list.
Ooh, yeah.
Because that movie it's original, it's great. Oh my god, I just can't get over that epic soundtrack. And it's just an all-around really good movie, and what made that movie stand out from all the other ones is that one's really original.
Yeah, definitely.
That one's probably the most original one out of all of them, so...
And is in fact based on a true story, but I'll get into that when we get to Creature in the Black Lagoon. Gorizard, so your nostalgic experiences with the Universal movies?
Yeah, it was like back in 2000, a day after they premiered King Kong vs. Godzilla on the Sci-Fi Channel. They started putting out all these Universal monster films for the Christmas weekend, and one of them was Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein. So yeah, that was my first taste of the Universal monster.
Oh, that
universe.
Was all three of ours? Weird.
Yeah, major coincidence.
Probably because it was a comedy. I'll be honest, probably because it was a comedy.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. I think we should... I want to get into that one when we get to The Wolfman, because I consider everything after The Wolfman to be a Wolfman movie. So we'll get into that when we get to The Wolfman, but Gorizard, continue.
Right. Well, anyways, I saw this film because my dad told me to sit down and watch it with him, because he was a fan of the Universal monster films, and he appreciated all the art that went into making these films, and of course I appreciate it too. And I watched it and I loved it. And after that, I saw Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man, which was good, but not as funny as the when they meet Frankenstein, because that one includes all of the main Universal monsters: Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, and the Wolfman. After that, I just started going out and renting these Universal monster films, and I started watching Frankenstein, then the Wolfman. Sooner enough, they started coming out on TV, even the ones that are not that were not being produced by Universal Pictures, such as Curse of the Werewolf and whatnot, a couple of the Hammer films. Anyways, but yeah, I remember my most fondest memory is watching these movies on TV. You guys know the Universal Monsters logo.
Sure do.
Yeah, it always came on AMC, TMC.
AMC, baby, yeah.
All of of these channels that aired classic films, and they always used that logo to promote the marathon. So that was always my
they had that for Monster Fest in 01.
Right. So that's my nostalgic memory of the Universal Monster films.
Yeah, and that's funny. My first movie was ANC made Frankenstein as well, and that's still, as Adam knows, that's still one of my favorite movies of all time. I absolutely love that movie. That film was the one that introduced me to the Universal Monsters. I still have my VHS tape, but I don't watch it anymore because it's broken because I have it on DVD now. But that VHS tape was so nostalgic for me. I watched it every Halloween. I tried to watch it every Halloween day. I fell in love with that movie. I think it's one of the funniest movies ever made. Certainly one of the funniest horror comedies ever made. And it's just, of course, it's got all the Universal Monsters in it, played by their classic actors. It's Bela Lugosi's only second time playing Dracula on screen, so that's funny. Lon Chaney is the Wolfman, of course, and Glenn Strange as the Frankenstein monster. He had played him twice before that, but kind of classic. Anyway, that was my first experience with them. My most nostalgic Universal Monster memory is actually Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. That was the first one that was actually a serious horror film that I saw. And I got the VHS tape for that at an old Walmart that is closed down now, and I have a lot of nostalgia for that place as well. I got this movie there, and I fell in love with it. It's just such a a very stylistic and interesting and fun to watch monster movie. It's of course the birth of the crossover monster battle. This is where we got King Kong versus Godzilla from and stuff. That was my first big experience with it, and I still love that movie to this day. It's not my favorite anymore. It used to be, but I still absolutely love it. And of course, just being the birth of the Monster Rumble, it's of course got a lot of memories for me with that as well. So that was my first nostalgic experience with it. Seeing the individual movies like Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman, that came with TV because they didn't start putting them out on DVD until I think 06. I don't know.
Yeah, mine weren't with TV.
Yeah, me too. And
mine wasn't with TV. It was with VHS.
Oh, really? Well, that's how I saw it.
I never watched them on TV because I had them all on VHS because I had them all previously on VHS, so I never watched them on TV. What was nostalgic for me was the Godzilla on AMC. Godzilla on TV was that, I guess, for me anyways. But these movies were all on VHS and DVD when I really started getting into them.
Yeah.
The birth DVD. Creature from the Black Lagoon was the same way. The first time I watched it, it was my cousin rented it with King Kong. And so I watched King Kong, and then immediately after King Kong, I watched Creature from the Black Lagoon. So they're both very, very, very nostalgic for me. So.
Yeah, Creature was VHS for me too, but the individual solo films for Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman, that was TV for me. I saw Dracula for the first time the same time as Frankenstein. The Wolfman I saw even before that, and those were on AMC and Chiller respectively. And I fell in love with those films that way as well. So AMC's Monster Fest I owe a lot to for seeing a lot of these movies because that thing kicked ass. I wish they still did that because that was just fucking awesome. And I miss that a lot. So that's my nostalgic memories of the Universal Monsters. So now I guess we're going to get into the individual films. We're going to start with Dracula, of course, and we're going to give we're basically going to go round robin, give our overall thoughts, and then branch off into our discussions based on what we say in those little round robin segments. So basically I'm going to ask each one of you guys to give a short little overall kind of review of each film, and of course I'm going to do the same, and we're going to start with Dracula. So I guess we'll start with, since we started with you with the nostalgia thing, Gorizard, we'll start with you. Your overall kind of thoughts of the 1931 version of Dracula, the film that started it all. So what's your overall thoughts of Dracula?
Well, honestly, I didn't see Dracula when I was a kid. I saw it once I got into high school, I believe. Once the main Universal Monster films came out on DVD on the Legacy collection, which is what I have for the main ones. That was my first exposure to Dracula, was on DVD. And I guess my thought about it is a little biased. You know, it's the first, it's the one that started it all, and it's with Bela Lugosi, so I think it's good, but honestly, I prefer the Spanish version better because it has a much more better script than the English version.
Yeah, see, I haven't seen the Spanish version.
The thing about the Spanish version is that it's more lively.
Right.
Like the English version feels a little stale at points.
Stiff. I think stiff is the.
Yeah, I agree. I think the big thing for that is the camera, because the English version was revolutionary for English films because it had quite a few camera tracks in it. The Spanish version has a lot more. So I just wanted to agree with Gorizard on that. So continue, dude.
It's not just the cameras either. It's also the acting. In the English version, everyone just delivers a standard mediocre performance. In the Spanish version, everyone's kind of ecstatic. I guess that's the word to say. Everyone brings their A game into it because no one else is going to watch this film if they're lucky they are, so they just go with the flow. With the English version, everyone is just like sticking to the script and just basically bringing what they read to life without giving any proper liveliness to it. But I still like the English version because of Bela Lugosi. It's his performance alone that kind of saves the film. He really brings this presence of a vampire.
Yeah.
I can't imagine any other actor who could perfect that performance other than Bela Lugosi. He looks like Dracula. He looks like a vampire, and he played that role very well. He took it seriously.
He definitely defined it.
Right.
So Adam, your overall thoughts of Dracula?
Boring. Other than Bela Lugosi's performance and a couple atmospheric scenes, especially when Bela Lugosi goes into that house and then all of a sudden, you brought it up in your review when you were talking about the new soundtrack, and there's a scene where it was all quiet, there's nothing but the sound effects, and it was really atmospheric, and then all of a sudden the music ruined it. It was that scene that I really liked. That scene stuck out to me. The only reason why I can like this movie and really appreciate it is just how revolutionary it was. It was, and this is one of the first talkies. I mean, this is when talkies were in their infancy, and it was very well done. The cinematography is great. It's just really sort of boring. It just drags on. Definitely, it's probably my least favorite. It is my least favorite out of the horror movies, but
mine too.
It's still pretty good, though. I still really liked it, though. In the end, I still like it.
I have to agree with Chopper. One of my complaints with the 1931 Dracula is the lack of soundtrack.
That's not my problem.
No. I don't agree with. Did I say that?
Or I probably misunderstood, but
because I actually like how there isn't a soundtrack.
Me too.
Because it puts a lot of atmosphere in the movie.
Well, before we get into that, let me just give my overall thoughts on it, because that's an interesting point I want to get to. Dracula is a movie that I too never really had much experience with until, I was really into Universal, until I was already into the style, into the films, and that's when I said, all right, I gotta sit down and watch Dracula. It was about, I guess 4 years ago was the first time I saw it, and my thoughts on it were, wow, this is really hard to sit through. And I'm not sure if that's a fair criticism because the movie is from 1931 and this is the first sound horror film. So I thought to myself, I don't personally like it that much because it's very, very prototypey for the horror movie, and I think that's part of it as well. But the first time I saw it, I thought it was very difficult to sit through and not a very watchable film by today's standards. And then I got that Universal 100th Anniversary Spotlight Collection Classic Monsters, and I sat through the film again and watched it a couple times with the new score, the Spanish version, the special features, the commentary, and I grew this appreciation for it of it's not very watchable by today's standards because it's extremely prototypey, and I feel like Todd Browning and the production team were doing some some very experimental things with the camera, with the script, with the actors, and also the transition. Here's the thing that kind of makes it unwatchable by today's standards for certain people. This isn't something that bugs me, but certain people, I can see this being a problem. The acting is extremely theatrical, quote unquote, and I think that's just because, for the most part, these actors were all from Broadway. These were not film actors exactly by the definition. These were, because these are people who knew how to act with their voice coming into sound film, and I think that adds to the kind of prototypiness of it, because they're not film acting, they're stage acting, and that doesn't exactly work for film. And that's just really my overall problem with Dracula, is that it's very prototypey, I think that the story itself is a little lackluster. It doesn't really follow the book at all. I mean, there are certain parts of it that are taken from Bram Stoker's novel, but overall it feels a lot more like the stage productions that were going on at the time, and that feels a little oversimplified, and I don't think it had to be. So I think that the film is very prototypey and is also a little lackluster in terms of a story. So, I'm with you guys. The big thing, Bela Lugosi's performance. Wow. Just an incredible job. He defined the vampire. And despite it being not very watchable by today's standards of film, it is an important film in terms of just characterizing horror films in general and the vampire as a film character, because basically, visually, aesthetically, the way vampires are in pop culture is Bela Lugosi's Dracula. And I think that he defined what a vampire is supposed to be like, and he defined how Dracula is supposed to be as a fictional character. The look and the way he moves, just all that. Most of it's Bela Lugosi. So I think that this film is important for that, and I can appreciate it on that level as well. But I'm overall with you guys. I think that it doesn't really stand up or hold up against today's standards, so I'm with you guys. But you guys have raised a couple interesting points about the soundtrack. Have you guys both seen the restored version with Philip Glass's soundtrack?
Yeah, not.
I don't hate it. I love the soundtrack individually from the film. In the film, it doesn't work at all. At all. Because it feels very alien to the production.
Right.
I haven't bothered watching it because I knew that the soundtrack sounded too contemporary for a film that was made in 1931. And the reason why my complaint is that the lack of a soundtrack is what bugs me in a few parts of the film is because, I can imagine, like, traditional 1930s horror-like music playing in several scenes. Like, I could take a couple soundtracks from Werewolf of London or The Wolfman or some of the Frankenstein sequels and incorporate it into the Bela Lugosi soundtrack and make it work. The problem is that, like you said, it's too prototypey. They were trying to experiment with talkie films from those days. Yeah. And soundtracks weren't even available. Not available. They weren't being experimented upon because, they still had those pianos in theaters and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean,
and I heard that there was a silent version of Dracula.
Yeah, there was. The thing was that a lot of theaters back when this movie came out weren't equipped to play sound, so they had to create a silent version for those theaters. And of course, it's a very different movie because I haven't seen the silent version. I have no interest in it, but I just know it exists and that it's quite a different experience. So I don't know if I fully agree because I feel like there are very certain scenes that are shot without music in mind, and of course I brought that one up in my video with the scene in Dracula's castle where Renfield is being preyed upon by Dracula's brides, and then Dracula comes in to stop them. It doesn't work with music, and I was crying foul when I was watching the Philip Glass version with the music in it because it feels very intrusive on the film. It ruins the stuff that Todd Browning was trying to do with it, and I just think that the film was intended to have silent segments, and there aren't really in the Philip Glass score version. So I feel like those scenes shouldn't have music, and of course, I feel like it's very intrusive. So I don't fully agree because I feel like the film, in certain aspects, was intended to not have a score. So I think with a score it could be perhaps even better, but one that one that was with the film being filmed with the soundtrack in mind. I'm just saying that without the film being filmed with that in mind, it doesn't really work.
You mean a soundtrack that fits with the tone and style of the film?
No, because I think the Philip Glass version does that. I think it does match that. I just don't think it fits with the way the film was, like just the progression of the shots. Because it's filmed with silence in mind, so when there's a score introduced, it could be any score. It just wouldn't work. So I think if you're gonna film a movie or a Dracula film with that score in mind, it has to be filmed with that in mind. You know what I mean? I don't think the 1931 Dracula could have a score introduced successfully.
Right.
So yeah. What do you guys think about, aside from Bela Lugosi, the acting overall? Does it bother you that these are Broadway actors playing the roles in a Broadway fashion, or does that work for you in a way?
Works for me.
Me too.
I really didn't pay attention much to the acting because, of course, this is a horror monster film. No one really goes into these movies expecting Academy Award-winning performances now. But honestly, I just felt the acting's probably no different from the acting from, any of the other monster films from Universal. So I thought it was just pretty standard, pretty okay, mediocre. It's like, no biggie.
I don't know, because the thing is, again, this is the first sound horror film ever made, so I feel like these actors were kind of playing around with it. And I think Frankenstein has this a little bit too, which we'll get to in a few minutes. And but Frankenstein had Dracula to work off of, so it knew what it had to change in order to work better. Dracula is very much so a play on film. And I think that works in certain ways and doesn't work in certain ways. The lackluster story and the prototypiness of the camera withstanding that. And I think the acting is just a casualty of it. I personally like I love Dwight Frye's performance as Renfield. I think it's very, very creepy. I think that him being a Broadway actor, having to, he had to learn how to do that. So I think that he fits perfectly into that role. The problem is that characters like Edward Van Sloan as Van Helsing, I really like his performance, by the way, but he's playing off of characters like Dr. Seward and Jonathan Harker and Mina and Lucy, playing very, 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 very very, very plainly, and him playing off of them being this kind of rolling, with a very rolling accent, with a very big voice, it doesn't work. Like him playing off of them, it just feels it's very polarizing. So I think that the Broadway acting works for the most part, but when you compare it to the staler, these are clearly people who this is their first movie, it doesn't work at all. So that's actually all I have to say about Dracula. So is there anything else you guys like to bring up about Dracula?
One thing I like to say about Bela Lugosi is that everyone associates the actor Lugosi with Dracula, even though he only played the character twice in his career.
Yeah.
I mean, when someone says Dracula, I immediately picture Bela Lugosi, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people share that same sentiment.
Not me.
But I like to point, Chopper, you made me lose my point.
Sorry, Jesus.
Now I can't remember what I was going to say. Okay, bottom line, everyone except for Chopper. Sometimes I think of Lugosi in mind when they think of Dracula.
And half of the female population.
Well, that's teenagers, man. I'm talking about women. Okay, anyways. Again, lost my point. God damn it, I lost my point. Never mind, okay.
No, but I can see where you're going. I ultimately agree. Bela Lugosi defined the way you play a vampire on film. Just define the image of the vampire, and I think that's ultimately why I think you should see this movie if you're a film buff, because this is where it all started. So I think this film is vastly important for that as well. Adam, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, onto Gorizard's thing. I don't think of Bela Lugosi when I picture Dracula. The person who I think of is Christopher Lee.
I knew you were going to say that.
I'm a sucker for those Hammer movies. Those Hammer movies are very, very nostalgic for me. So
when I think of Christopher Lee, I think of Saruman.
Saruman! Sorry.
I think
Christopher Lee's a fucking awesome villain actor.
True.
Yeah. Well, I watched the Hammer movie the other day where he actually played a good guy, and he actually did a good job, too.
Which one was that?
It was shit. It's about this guy, and this girl goes over to his house, and they're about to get married, and it turns out that the other people that are living in there are like Satan worshippers, and it's really cool. It's a Terrence Fisher movie. What was it called? I have it taped, so I'll be able to tell you guys later, probably. But.
All right. Okay then. So I think that's basically all we have to say about Dracula, unless there's anything else you guys want to bring up.
That's it.
Okay.
Nazis on the moon.
Great transition from Dracula. So that's all our thoughts on the 1931 version of Dracula, and now we're going to move on to another incredibly influential and important landmark in film and horror history, the 1931 version of Frankenstein. The film that made Boris Karloff an acting legend. So, who do we start with for the Dracula? If we started with Gorizard, we started with you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Adam, would you like to start us out on the 1931 version of Frankenstein?
No, but all right, I'll go.
Well, fine then. No, it's cool. Go ahead.
No. This movie is so cool. This movie was basically like how Dracula probably would have been, you know? Like, I feel like if this movie, if Frankenstein was made before Dracula, it would have been like Dracula, and then Dracula would have been like this movie, because I think these movies built off of each other.
I agree.
And it clearly shows, because the cinematography and everything, like I said, the cinematography for Dracula was amazing, and it's really, really amazing in this movie. But the biggest difference is the acting's different. The acting styles are different, the story is interesting, the characters are interesting, and above all, the monster is really interesting.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And above all, human. And that's what I think makes this movie stand above all the other movies made in the 30s and 40s, is that this movie really captures an emotion and feeling behind the monster and makes the monster a character. And it was just one of the first times we had that. I think the first time we ever had like somebody sort of sympathize with the monster was in Lon Chaney's Phantom of the Opera, but I digress. It's just a really well acted movie, and again, there's hardly any musical. There's like hardly anything of a music scoring other than for the opening titles, and I really like that too, because there's a lot of great scenes of atmosphere. There's also a lot of great room for tragedy in this movie. There's several tragedy scenes in this movie, and it's just a really, really great movie. If you haven't seen it, then you're clearly not a fan of cinema, because this movie really is a stepping stone in terms of cinema, especially in the United States. Actually, all around the world.
Yeah.
Because this movie was still made when talkies were in their infancy, and this movie, it's really great, and it's a really nostalgic movie for me. But above all, I think it's still a really, really good movie and holds up to this day.
Yeah. I completely agree. And the thing with Frankenstein that holds up above Dracula is that Frankenstein to me works by today's standards. Like, I can't think of there are certain things where it kind of, you know, you can still like say that it doesn't really hold up by today's standards, but just in terms of like enjoyment and watchability, it does hold up to me, because I can watch this movie, enjoy it, and be emotionally affected by it very easily. Dracula, I have to work at it. With Frankenstein though, it's not only easy for me, but it's, I don't know. I absolutely love the 1931 version of Dracula, of Frankenstein, excuse me, and I think it's one of my favorites. It's not, I don't want to call it my favorite, because I don't know, there are other movies that I could put above it, but it's definitely up there for me. And the thing that I absolutely love about this movie is, one, Colin Clive as Henry Frankenstein. He's awesome. He manages to be both incredibly over the top and fun to watch, but really sad and interesting. And very, very extremely invested in the macabre and just the atmosphere around him, and just he's an interesting character, and that's what holds Frankenstein up above Dracula for me, is the fact that the characters are very interesting. The relationship they have that are interesting. The acting is fantastic. It's not Broadway style acting at all, because even Dwight Fry is in this film as well, and he plays another Renfield type role with Fritz, Frankenstein's assistant, and he's another very over the top, creepy kind of character, but he's not like Renfield is extremely theatrical. Fritz is a lot more subtle, and that really outlines the differences between Dracula and Frankenstein. Is that Frankenstein finds a happy balance between the Broadway over the top acting and the more subtle visual acting of film, and I think it's a great compromise that in some ways defined the way acting is supposed to work in film. It's a middle ground. You have to project your voice, but also use your mannerisms. And I think Boris Karloff's performance, embodies that, especially in Bride of Frankenstein, but in this film as well, of the mostly visual performance, but one that also has sound roots in it. Like his growls and the way he walks and just all that stuff. So I think that this film is extremely important for that. And unlike Dracula, which I said in the previous segment that it kind of suffered from having a lackluster Broadway-esque story, Frankenstein has the potential to suffer from that. I don't think it does. And I think the reason for that is because of the characters. They're more interesting. And that more simplified version of the source material works with that because we have more time to focus on the characters rather than a really overblown story. So I think the simplified plot works better for Frankenstein. So that's kind of my overall thoughts on the 1931 version of Frankenstein. I think it's fantastic. And I'm with Adam. If you're a film fan, you got to check this thing out. So, Gorizard, your overall thoughts on Frankenstein?
May I just say something really quickly?
Sure, go ahead. Go for it.
I forgot to mention this, but the book ends in ice and the movie ends in fire.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, the movie ends in ice, where the creature freezes to death. And I believe the Doctor too. It's been a while.
Frankenstein dies of hypothermia.
Right. And then in this movie it ends the complete opposite way, where it ends in fire.
Yeah.
Which I find really funny and interesting.
Yeah.
Very ironic.
So, Gorizard, your overall thoughts on Frankenstein?
I can honestly say it's one of my favorites. It's probably my number 2 favorite Universal monster film. There's really not much to say because you covered basically everything what I thought about the 1931 film, which I hate every time you do that.
Sorry, bro. Sorry.
So I'm practically empty right now, but yeah, it's the most recognizable monster in the Universal horror cinema, or universe, whichever you might want to call it. And it's universally one of the most popularized movie monsters of all times, even if no one's ever seen this film. Anyone who can see Jack Pierce's Frankenstein monster design can immediately associate it with Frankenstein. And I have nothing else to say because you both covered everything what I felt about this film.
Let's open the floor to discussion then. So let's open up the floor to a little bit of discussion. One thing I'll throw out there is this movie is at fault for causing the confusion of who exactly is Frankenstein, the monster or the man. And I think that this film is the center point of that problem.
I'm glad you brought that up. Everyone calls the monster Frankenstein, and though it's a misconception, it's kind of appropriate because the monster is Frankenstein's creation, so by natural means the creation would inherit its creator's name, similar how a child inherits its father's name or its parents' name. So in context, it's appropriate to call the monster Frankenstein, if you think about it.
True. I mean, that's obviously not what people are thinking when they call it Frankenstein. To them, the scientist doesn't even have a name.
Yeah, I know.
So, but I can see that point. I've heard people bring it up before. It's interesting. I think if there was a film where that idea was brought up, then I think it could be really interesting. But in the 1931 version, it carries a similar thing with the book where Henry, in this case, not Victor, abandons the monster nearly immediately after creating it. In this film, it's a little bit more prolonged because the interesting thing about this is that he tries to train it. He tries to work with it. He tries to make it a person with articulate movements and such. He just doesn't get the chance because Fritz tortures it to the point where it goes on a killing spree, kills Fritz, attacks Henry and Dr. Waldman, and then kills Dr. Waldman. So what the hell was it? Oh yeah, so he wouldn't get there's more of an alienation between Henry Frankenstein and the monster. So I don't think that in the context of this film, that idea doesn't work because, of course, they're both isolated from each other, and as we see in the sequel, really have nothing to do with each other. But I can see that point. I think it's interesting, but I just think that a movie would have to bring it up in order for me to totally buy it. So one thing I'll say, one thing I'll also open up the floor to discussion with is adaptation of the book, because of course Mary Shelley's novel was in the public domain when this movie was made. She put it in the public domain in 1831, 100 years before this movie was made. And of course, there wasn't any direct copyright stuff they had to do to get the rights to the novel. The interesting thing, the copyright they had to get was for the play. And that play was the first theatrical interpretation of Frankenstein called Presumption, and which was made in 1819, so that's three years after Mary Shelley wrote the book, and this movie is more based on that. So what I want to ask you guys is, do you think that this film suffers from the same problem that we talked about with Dracula, of it feeling too much like a play on film, or do you think it benefits from it like I do? So what do you guys think about that?
I wouldn't say it suffers. I wouldn't say it benefits either. More like something in between. Because now that you bring it up, it does feel like watching a film adaptation of a play at times, particularly because of the sets, the way the camera moves around. It doesn't move around like a traditional cinematography. It moves around like a play. Like you would follow a character to one specific room, and you pass right through the wall. You see that a lot in this film.
Yeah, and you see that a lot in James Whale's films overall, because of course he was a play director before he was a film director, and he carries over a lot of his theatrical sensibilities into film. And of course, you see a lot of, particularly in both The Invisible Man and in Bride of Frankenstein, with these kind of weird shots of like, he seems to not obey the laws of physics, because he'll like move through a wall and it looks like a play set. Like it'll be just like it's nearly breaking the fourth wall. So
Tarantino does that.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think it works for this material because the thing about Universal overall is that the films don't really take place in a specific time period or setting. They're very much so in a Never-Neverland mixture, kind of like Batman the Animated Series, of just like this world that's a mix of a bunch of different stuff. Like 1931 Frankenstein kind of looks like the time period of the novel, but there's also contemporary things in it. Like just the way Henry dresses looks very contemporary for the time. A traditional suit and tie. That's not how they dressed back at the time the novel was written. So I think that that's one of the things that James Whale used to his advantage, so that he could kind of get away with the breaking the fourth wall thing. So I don't know, I thought I'd throw that out there. But we'll get into more of that when we get to the legacy of Universal. So question I'll throw out to you guys. Do you prefer Karloff in Frankenstein or Bride of Frankenstein?
Frankenstein.
Really?
I'm stuck in between. I'm on the fence about it. I love Karloff and Bride of Frankenstein because it requires a lot of his acting skills, and you get to see that on screen. However, with Frankenstein, you get to see the character's primitive side before he gets to become more humanistic in Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah, that's why I like him more in Frankenstein's, because, at first he does look somewhat like an innocent soul. And like the first time you see him, he doesn't look necessarily evil. He looks confused. and then he just gets abused and beaten, and that's why he becomes evil, and that's ultimately why I think his performance in Frankenstein's better than the Bride of Frankenstein, though not by much.
Which is interesting, because if you think about it, the monster was given the brain of a criminal.
Right.
And here's an interesting point I want to bring up quick. You gotta ask yourself, is it because Fritz beats him that he becomes a little bit malicious, or is it because of the brain?
I think it's because
I think it's both. I think Fritz's abusement triggers something that was already hidden inside of the brain.
That's what I think. Yeah.
Interesting. So then I guess we'd be saying. So the question is, do you think that if Fritz hadn't beaten him, if Henry had fired him or gotten rid of him before he could ever get the chance to do that, do you think the monster would still be like being trained by Henry to be more of a person, or do you think regardless of Fritz being there, at one point he would have snapped?
Yes, I do agree. Yeah. Even after Fritz beats him up and triggers his primal side, people are still screaming and running away from Frankenstein. And
Frankenstein's monster.
Frankenstein's monster. And
bitch slap.
Hypothetically speaking, if Fritz was fired beforehand, before he ever got a chance to lay eyes upon the monster, the people would have been the ones triggering the monster's primal instincts, or his anger, if you will. Because, come on, does anybody really want to be told, hey, you're ugly, and I'm going to scream at you?
True. So
he would have snapped eventually. It was just a matter of time. Fritz just triggered his anger early on.
I agree. I think that, and I think that's really interesting because, again, it's almost like you got because a lot of people have brought it up with this particular version of, is it Henry's fault that the monster is persecuted and leads a miserable life, or is it just because he's got that bad brain, which Henry had nothing to do with? And I ultimately think that it's somewhere in between of, all right, yeah, he's got that bad brain, and that triggers him to do bad things more easily, kill Fritz, get a little excited and kill the girl, and then try to kill Elizabeth, and try to kill Henry, kill a couple of the villagers. But I think that either way, even if Henry had just made him with a good brain and he had been a fully articulate being, he still would have ended up being persecuted. And right, that's why... Go ahead.
I don't think it's because of the brain that people treat him differently. It's because of the way he looks.
Right, I was going to get to that. I was going to say, even if the brain was good, he would still probably be tortured because he looks hideous.
No, and listen, if this was the case, if that was the case, and what you said happened, where it was the villagers that just caused him to be ridiculed and he was a fully articulate person, it'd be very much an Elephant Man story.
Yeah. Oh, definitely interesting. Yeah.
Because I don't know. Have you guys seen The Elephant Man?
No, but I know the story.
With Anthony Hopkins in it. Oh my God, it's a beautiful movie and really sad too. But it would have been very much like The Elephant Man, or the story of The Elephant Man, because he's a smart man. He's a genius, and he's just so deformed and so misshapen that society will not accept him. And ultimately, I think if this was the case, I think we would have gotten a totally different movie. I think we would have had, instead of Frankenstein killing people, it would have been Frankenstein winds up killing himself in the end. It would have been something a lot more tragic than what we wound up getting.
Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I do agree, though. I think it's ultimately Henry's doing that the monster... Just the fact that he created a being from dead corpses is the problem. It's not just the brain. And I think that's an interesting thing that it was put in for the movie that I really, really like. So, I don't know, I thought that was an interesting point of discussion. So, yeah. But for me personally... I'm kind of with Gorizard. I have to ultimately pick a middle ground because I think it's an interesting progression from what Karloff is doing with the character in Frankenstein to the advancement he gets in Bride of Frankenstein. I think then it's just a preference of, do you prefer the monster being a simple mute, or do you prefer him to go through human advancement of the more time he spends alive, the more advanced he becomes as a person, like, like an actual person. And I personally am totally fine with the advancement thing. I think he's the most interesting when he's an innocent and the most tragic, but I think even when he becomes more advanced, the tragedy just becomes different. Because in the first film, it's very much so a child trying to get the acceptance of its parents. The Frankenstein monster is trying to get the acceptance of Frankenstein, but more broadly the acceptance of human society. And he fails at it. Bride, he's realized that he can't, and now he's just trying to find a companion. And then he realizes that there is no companion will ever accept me because I'm against nature. And that's when he decides to kill himself. So that's the really interesting thing about the progression, and why I think both are differently tragic. I just find the one in Bride a tad more interesting. That he has accepted the fact, he says, I love dead, hate living. He's accepted the fact that he doesn't belong in the world that Frankenstein belongs in. That he has to find his own calling. But even then, he realizes that he cannot exist. So I find that a little bit more interesting, but I think both are extremely valid, and Karloff plays both brilliantly. So overall, Karloff defined the way the Frankenstein monster is supposed to be. Jack Pierce, of course, did it visually. Karloff did it through his performance. So I think that Karloff deserves a lot of the credit for why the monster is such an icon of pop culture, and why when people think the Frankenstein monster, they think Karloff's version.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, me too. And I think that his performance, and of course Jack Pierce's makeup design for him, are the big reasons why. But more than that, and visually, this film was also very influential. Of course, we had sequels after this that took it, but a mad scientist lab started with this film.
I want that lab.
Yeah, I know, me too. And it's just like, that's where the mad scientist lab started. The electrodes, the booming, the lightning, all the machines, the table, all that kind of stuff, all established with the 1931 version of Frankenstein. So, I think we can ultimately sum up this movie as it's extremely influential, but unlike Dracula, where that's all it has going for it, it's also really entertaining and fascinating. So that's why I really like this film better than Dracula, why I think it's an improvement. So is there anything else you guys want to say about Frankenstein before we move on?
I wanted to say something about the makeup, but it's too obvious to probably say.
No, go for it, please.
What I wanted to say, like you said, when everyone thinks of Frankenstein or the monster, they all think of the Boris Karloff Frankenstein monster. I don't want to be corrected again. Anyways, there's been so many different incarnations of the design for the monster. However, it's the Jack Pierce design that stands out of all of them.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I mean, I can't think of any of the other designs for the monster that are really all that known amongst pop culture. I mean, we'll just throw out a few examples. The Hammer one jumped all over the place, so that one never even really had a specific design because there were a bunch of different ones. I mean, the Robert De Niro one was so simple that who remembers that? So I agree. I think the Jack Pierce one is the definitive version of the Frankenstein monster.
There's this design for the monster which I find so lazy and grotesque at the same time. I don't know if you heard of this horror exploitation film called Frankenstein 80.
No.
Something like that. I don't know, but the design for that monster, that incarnation of the Frankenstein monster, is so horrible. It's basically a bald criminal with the bone.
What is it?
Okay, just think of a redneck, a bald redneck with a scar running down his eye and a bone, holding a bone.
What the hell?
I swear to God, just Google search Frankenstein 80.
I'm putting a picture of it up on the screen. Hang on.
It's so simple
80?
and so stupid. It's not even what one would expect from a Frankenstein monster.
Wait, hang on. I'm looking. I'm trying to find it.
Frankenstein 80.
Oh, I see it. What the hell? What the hell? I'm showing it up on screen right now. Had a bone to pick. What the fuck? That's bizarre. Okay.
Yeah, there are worser designs than the Hammer version, but
Worser?
Worser.
Grammar.
Are you seeing the one that Zanzibar is seeing?
Yeah.
Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that Jack Pierce's design of the Frankenstein monster has stood the test of time, and it still exists even after it was created during the Great Depression.
Yeah, it's definitely the most influential, so I completely agree. I don't think that there's any other design for the monster that even kind of comes close, so... Anything else you guys want to say?
There's an Italian Frankenstein movie, and it's full of sex and violence, and it's great. But the design of Frankenstein was horrible. It was really generic. But what was interesting about that was it showed Dr. Frankenstein, like, killing people to take their organs and use them. And it was great. It was just so great. That made me think of it. It was an Italian movie and it's full of sex and gore, and how can you go wrong with that?
That's downstairs.
Damn. The Italians have a vivid imagination when it comes to sexploitation films.
Yep.
Speaking of the Universal horror films, Italy has their own version of Universal monster films, except that theirs are not centered on several creatures. They're centered on a Wolfman-esque creature, just simply called El Hombre Lobo, which literally means the Wolfman in Spanish. And I forgot the name of the actor, but he's considered the Boris Karloff of Italy. And he starred in a whole bunch of exploitation films, which are considered to be the Italian equivalent to the Universal horror films, and they are so... gross, like X-rated gross. Not sexually, but gore-wise. It's like unnecessary gore.
Someone sent me, well, they didn't send me, they wrote a comment on my Wolfman music video about those movies, and I'm really intrigued to see them because they were like, they have this own version of Destroy All Monsters with like all the monsters getting in one big fight or something. I'm really interested to see them. And it's called like Assignment Terror or something.
But there's a whole bunch of titles for these weird Italian gore fest films, but they all center around a specific werewolf character, and there are countless sequels with the same character. The creators claim that they are not connected in any way, despite having the titles Return of the Wolfman or The Wolfman Strikes Back, something like that.
That's weird. And isn't that strange? Because the Universal films have that. We'll get to this in a minute, but the Universal films have this as well, where like the Wolfman is the main character in all of like the team-up movies. Like from Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman on, he's kind of the central monster. He's the one, not exactly driving the plot, but the one that has the most screen time. Which I think is a good segue because do you guys have anything else you want to add about the Frankenstein films or? No? Okay. So then we're going to move on to the Wolfman himself. So, we'll talk about the franchise that followed after that, but I guess we'll start with the original film first. So I'll start with this one since I haven't started for the other one. So I'm going to start with my overall thoughts on the 1941 version of The Wolfman. The Wolfman used to be my favorite of all of the Universal films, and my favorite of all the... He is still my favorite of all the Universal monsters, but it's not my favorite film anymore. It's definitely a second, but I have another one that I have... I'll get to a little later, but The Wolfman as a film overall, again, extremely influential for the horror film, the way a horror film is supposed to look, especially with the idea of like spooky woods, just with those foggy, creepy, dead-looking trees and all that kind of cool stuff. That's all started with the Wolfman. Excuse me. So it's of course extremely influential for that. The big thing though that carries this movie and carries the Wolfman as a character, Lon Chaney Jr.'s performance. He plays the Wolfman as such a tragic and interesting and multi-layered character that he's got different types of tragedy, but he hides it under a sort of charm. And he has this in all the films he appears in. He almost puts on like a fake smile whenever he has to. And the original film has that a lot because clearly before Larry Talbot arrives back at Talbot Castle in Llanwelly, he's got this tragedy behind him that they don't really explain, but he wears it on his sleeve. And of course, Sir John Talbot brings it up quite a bit, but Larry never really explains it. But that's really why I love the Wolfman, is the characters and the acting are all very interesting. The story to me feels the most developed and most interesting of the three that we've already talked about. It feels like it was the most the one that had the least cut out. Like, I feel like Dracula and Frankenstein had to cut down the material. I don't feel like I'm not saying it's a problem, I'm just saying that they had to. The Wolfman isn't really based on a book or anything, so it doesn't have to. And more than that, it has a more fully realized story. So that's partially why it's my favorite, but overall, the music score, oh my god, the music score, just epic, classic horror score. Jack Pierce's design for the Wolfman is, of course, extremely classic, defined the way a werewolf is supposed to look. And just overall, it's a classic film. It's an extremely entertaining film. It's a tragic film. And of the Universal films, it's one of the most layered of them. It's got the most subtext in it, about a lot about psychological dark overtones that's very present in the Wolfman. So it's also extremely interesting and one of my favorites for that as well. So I adore the Wolfman. It's my second favorite Universal horror film.
One thing I like to add about the score is that the Wolfman is the only monster with the trademark score.
Of the three we've talked about, yeah. Yeah, like he has that din din din, those three notes. Yeah, the three note. Yeah.
Frankenstein's monster and Dracula don't have any signature score to
well, they've got the opening credits theme, but even that, it's not a theme. It's just here's introducing the movie. The Wolfman, you're right, he has his own theme, which I love. It's awesome.
It really fits with the character of the Wolfman.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Every time I hear that theme, I think of the Wolfman, of course.
Yeah, even when it like pops up in King Kong versus Godzilla, I'm like, Wolfman.
Right.
So yeah. So Gorizard, you want to go ahead with your overall thoughts since you already threw out a couple things?
Yes.
Go for it, bro.
The Wolfman is my personal favorite monster from the Universal horror cinema, mainly because I love werewolves. I have a thing for werewolves.
Me too.
Not like I have a thing for Asians, just to be clear. I just wanted to point that out there. But yeah, the Wolfman is freaking awesome. I love him in every way. I love the character Larry Talbot because he has this kind of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde aspect to him. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And actually, I'll bring this up later when I may talk about the remake, but there's also a bit of a Shakespearean aspect to it, and psychological awareness to it, almost. Like, it's this story about, you know, someone who's like who's normal by day, but at night his demons come out. And geez, what else can I say about this? Just that it's freaking awesome, and it's my favorite monster and film from the Universal Horror Cinema series.
Yeah, and again, it's my second favorite. It's just a fantastic film. It has the most, well, maybe not the most, but some of the most interesting overtones of the films. Like, you know, the psychological idea of repressed darkness and evil coming out in the form of the Wolfman. And that's, of course, a big part of the original film, and really interesting. And the character of Lawrence Talbot really fits that idea and makes it extremely interesting. I love the film. So, Adam, your overall thoughts of The Wolfman?
Unique amongst all the other horror movies, Universal horror movies, because, again, it had its own music. And it also was made much later, too. That has something to do with it. It was was made much later than all the other ones were.
10 years, in fact.
Yeah, 10 years. And I'd just like to note that this movie was an extreme risk taker because they made Werewolf in London. That movie was a complete bomb and tanked. And it sucked. And so then we got this movie, which was a huge risk, and luckily it was a huge success. And Lon Chaney Jr.'s performance, oh my God. He did a great job, an amazing job. One of my favorite scenes he's in is it's right after he first changes into a werewolf, and it's like he wakes up the next morning, and he starts seeing that things are wrong. And I just love the looks on his face and stuff like that, like he's piecing the puzzle together. Yeah. And he steals this movie. He really does steal this movie out of all the other characters. He is this movie. And he just does a really amazing job. Everybody else does do an amazing job as well, but they're very small roles. Like Claude Rains, everything Claude Rains is in is great.
Yep.
We got the Gypsy. We got Bela Lugosi as the Gypsy's whatever it is. Yeah,
he's her son, which, interesting to note, he's older than her.
Yeah.
Awkward.
Oh, wait, seriously?
Yeah, Bela Lugosi is older than Maria Uspinskaya.
Yeah.
Google search right this.
When in doubt, go to Google. But yeah, everyone else really just has like a small role, and the movie focuses on what they need to focus on, and that is Lon Chaney Jr. And I think they do that extremely well, and the screenplay was unique, and the cinematography was really eerie, really great. I love how you don't know where the hell this takes place.
Yeah, and most of the films have that, but this one the most. Like, in the next film, they say the name of the town. I don't think they say it in the Wolfman itself.
Yeah, they never do.
Yeah, I mean, they say it in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, but in the original one, they don't specify the town. And also, the production team doesn't know, because the writer says Kurt Siodmak, England. Director, Germany. So, we know it's Europe, we just don't know where in Europe. The only place we know it can't take place is America. Because they say he's coming from America. So, right. America!
He can't come from America.
So yeah. And that's what I like about it. It's this very fantastic film.
Yeah.
Well, I just Googled this right quick. Apparently, Bela Lugosi is 6 years younger than Maria Uspinskaya, or however you pronounce it. He is. Okay. So, I misheard that.
That renders your argument inaccurate, Bill.
Damn it. No, but it's... Dude, you can't have a kid when you're 6.
So you're 50% accurate.
50% accurate. No, I'm still wrong, but no, it's still hilarious. No, but the worst I've ever seen it in a movie is in Forrest Gump, because I think her name is Sally Fields or something. She is about the same age as Tom Hanks, so.
Oh yeah.
In fact, they played love interests of each other in another movie.
Which is really awkward.
Really awkward. So, back to Universal though, and back to the Wolfman. Yeah, this movie was very influential in the way it shoots it. Like Fog, this movie is huge for Fog. This was kind of the movie that Dracula and Frankenstein had this a little bit too, but in my mind, The Wolfman is the film I think of when I think Fog in film.
You see, oh god, so this is the movie that started your fascination with Fog.
It sure did.
So each director has their trademark. I guess Gorizard's is a random action scene. Mine is the random foot shot. Let's see. Shiro Honda's is all the main characters climbing up a mountain. Akira Kurosawa's is the extremely long take. Stanley Kubrick's is the pan takes. And Bill Wurster's is Fog.
Just random Fog.
Lame.
They're in a Walmart. There's Fog. I love Fog. I'm just obsessed with it. And Adam, you can blame.
Do you like the movie The Fog, directed by John Carpenter because that's the entire movie.
I haven't seen that.
It's really bad. It's enjoyably bad.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
It's funny. I reviewed a John Carpenter movie yesterday. Check that review out. Of Memoirs of an Invisible Man.
Carpenter movie?
Yeah, it's a John Carpenter film.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I really like that movie. It's I think it's underrated. But anyway, so back to Universal. So yeah, I think the Wolfman made fog a popular thing to use in horror films because it's such a mysterious thing, and it wraps the world up in this fantastic mystery that defines Universal in my mind. That it's not exactly our world, and I think a lot of people take issue with that because it's like, you think that what's real is scarier than what isn't real. Like, that's going to scare you more. And I don't agree. At least not in the case of the Universal films. Because they take it as, yes, this isn't real, but that's the scary thing, that it takes you into this world that couldn't really exist, but it's a frightening and horrific and gothic world that you just love to experience. So that's how I take it, and the Wolfman is littered with that, and that's partially why it's my second favorite, because it's so visually rich, particularly in the sets, and the cinematography is great. Of course, the forest shots are amazing. So I love the cinematography as well. So I'll ask you guys this question quick. When you guys think werewolf, is this the design you think of?
No.
No. What is it then?
Mine is a mixture from the one of American Werewolf in London and Dog Soldiers.
Usually when I think of a werewolf, I think kind of like the hulking bipedal werewolf from Van Helsing or Underworld. But the Lon Chaney werewolf is the one that comes second to my mind. Right, yeah, it's like right up there. This movie is prototype werewolf, I guess, because it's the one that really sort of set Beastman, I guess.
It did definitely set up the way werewolves are supposed to work. I mean, this establishes the silver bullet, the pentagram, the full moon transformation, because early folklore didn't have that. Kurt Siodmak very much so made up the werewolf lore that we associate with werewolves. And also the thing is that he stole the silver bullet from Dracula. That hurts Dracula. Silver.
Right.
So, I mean, he kind of gave that to the werewolf.
Well, let's see, what hurts Dracula? Well, water does, sunlight does, silver does.
Everything hurts
Acid does.
Crosses.
You guys saw that angry video game nerd what's bullshit thing, haven't you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. They've got too much shit.
I never knew that until I saw that video.
Yeah, no, but it's totally true. This is, in fact, the thing I usually think of when I think of a werewolf.
Wait a minute. I have to bring up this flaw in logic. Okay, if Dracula can't have water, then how the fuck can he drink blood? Because blood has water in it?
Well, are we talking holy water or water in general?
Well, according to the friggin' not horror Dracula, it was one of the Hammer Dracula movies, it's any water can kill him. So how the fuck can he drink water? Because...
Well, I think it said that it's running water.
But that water is clearly sitting still because it's icy and he falls through it and it's sitting still. So there's flaw in the logic of them not being able to have water. And the biggest one, no matter what you say, is there is water in blood. So therefore they can't have an issue with water because if they had issue with water, then they couldn't drink blood. And that means all vampires are fucked so that they can't do really anything. Logic. Fuck you, logic.
Especially when we're talking about Universal movies.
When we're talking about the Wolfman. I'm sorry, that was like really bugging me now that we brought it up. I was like, wait, I have to point out this flaw.
Fair enough. The thing about, I don't know if this is kind of a prototypey movie in the way of setting up the werewolf lore. The most prototypey werewolf movie to me is Werewolf of London, because that movie cannot get its fucking facts straight. It's like, what is the werewolf? Is it like a Jekyll and Hyde thing? Is it a beast man? What the hell is it? And the movie does not pick one. It goes back and forth. And this, to me, it at least grounds what exactly the werewolf is. It's a transformation by the full moon of man to beast, or beast man, as Adam said. So, I mean, Werewolf of London couldn't get that straight. This movie, at least in that regard, does. The thing is that, here's the thing they never explain, and it's more in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, but it bugs me in this one too. What effect does Wolfbane have on werewolves? Because the poem is, even a man who is pure at heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the moon is full and bright, or in the original film, it's autumn moon is bright. What exactly effect does wolfbane have on werewolves? Because in The Wolfman, it's never stated, but in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, when they crack open his tomb, it's covered in wolfbane. So, what exactly does the wolfbane, does it make them stronger? Does it make them weaker? Is it just like a symbol of the werewolf? What exactly is it?
I guess it's supposed to keep it away or something?
Yeah, but when the wolfbane blooms and the moon is full and bright, it doesn't make any sense. What it's saying is when the wolfbane blooms, that's when the werewolves come out. It makes no sense.
I think I can kind of piece it out. Okay, when the wolfbane blooms, it blooms to keep the werewolf out. So it only blooms when there's danger inside of a wolf. I think. I don't know. That just came to my mind.
I never cared.
It bugs me because it's such a big. They make such a big deal out of it in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman.
I haven't seen that movie forever.
Oh, dude, watch it again. It's awesome. I saw it recently. That last fight, oh my god, so cool.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Zanzibar says, oh my god. Anything else you guys want to specifically say about the Wolfman?
No.
I do.
Liar.
I have one last thing I want to bring up. I just totally forgot it now.
Good.
No,
Release your anger. Sorry.
All right.
Good.
So now I think we should start to get into a little bit of the overall Universal franchise, and then we're going to get into Creature from the Black Lagoon. But
that's extremely shitty.
Well, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is good. House of Frankenstein is really disappointing. House of Dracula is a piece of shit, in my opinion.
Which ones? I get those two confused, Asbar. Could you?
Sure.
So Frankenstein, was that the one where it begins with Frankenstein, Dracula, and then Dracula dies, and then it has... Or is that House of Dracula?
What happens in House of Frankenstein? House of Frankenstein is the one with Boris Karloff as the mad scientist.
Yeah, I've seen that one. I haven't seen House of Dracula.
House of Dracula is just it's a complete 100% knockoff of House of Frankenstein, just with crappier special, because Bud Westmore, this is when Bud Westmore started to take over for Jack Pierce, so the special effects are really downgraded. The monsters barely have any screen time. Dracula dies in the beginning, like in House of Frankenstein. The Wolfman gets cured
somehow
about halfway through the movie. Then the Frankenstein monster doesn't wake up until 3 minutes before the movie's over.
Holy shit.
And every scene he's in is stock footage from Ghost of Frankenstein.
Oh my.
The way you said "oh my" was hilarious.
Edward would be having a field day watching that movie.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's a piece of shit.
Oh my.
And then of course you have A and C Meet Frankenstein, which is a masterpiece. So that's about the Universal franchise. Well, at least until the next film. But in terms of like the Wolfman, Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, that's what it is. It's Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Oh, that movie's genius.
Genius. House of Dracula is a piece of shit. House of Frankenstein isn't bad, it's just really disappointing.
It's weird.
It is really weird.
I watched it a lot when I was a kid, and I liked it. It was just so weird.
Yeah.
I found it depressing.
How so?
Everybody dies.
Yeah,
Everybody.
true.
I know that. I know that's kind of like the what's supposed to happen in these films. But I saw it as a kid. The gypsy died. The hunchback died. The doctor died with the monster. Everybody dies. I was like, there's so much death in this movie.
Hands down, best part about that movie is the Wolfman story. The Wolfman story is borderline on genius.
Well, of course, anything with the Wolfman is brilliant, in my opinion.
Not House of Dracula.
Even House of Dracula, I did find his quote-unquote cure kind of interesting because I did want to see how the hell are they gonna cure this guy?
Yeah, but they don't explain it. He just walks on screen and is like, I got cured.
I got cured.
And he's got a bandage on his head, so apparently that means he went through some kind of surgery. It's not explained.
Hey, your blood to the Red Cross today.
One thing I like to point out about House of Dracula is that weird thing that the mad scientist drinks the blood of the Wolfman or Frankenstein.
No,
and all of a sudden
he doesn't drink his blood. He keeps giving blood transfusions to Dracula because he's trying to cure Dracula's vampirism. I don't know. That's character for Dracula, but whatever.
Actually, that would be in it because I haven't seen it, but apparently they didn't deliver on this from what you guys are saying. But that would be interesting. Like, what if Dracula's like, "Hey, I really want to get cured."
Yeah,
or like, "Hey, I'm thinking this."
He doesn't like explain why though. He just shows up and is like, "Cure me," and I'm like, "Why would you?" All right, if there was a reason for it, like, "Oh, I really love this girl and I want to age with her," cool. But they don't say that. He's just like,
it's Twilight, except better.
yeah, exactly. Well, because it's Dracula, it's immediately better. Here's the really stupid part of it. One, they remove every single supernatural aspect of Dracula and the Wolfman. Dracula's got a blood disease.
Oh, God.
And that's what makes him a vampire. And the Wolfman has a brain problem.
The fuck?
Yeah, there's no supernatural. And
Just
get
because
this,
the Red
Adam.
Cross-
Get this. The full moon has nothing to do with the transformation. It's because Larry subconsciously believes it does, so somehow that forces his brain to cause the transformation.
What the fuck?
Exactly. Ultimately, watch House of Frankenstein. It's not the greatest thing ever. It's very visually displeasing. It's not a very visually good film. It's very simple, unlike the previous films. And it's just the disappointing thing is none of the monsters share any screen time. Dracula dies, the Wolfman dies, and the Frankenstein monster has about... In House of Frankenstein, he has about 9 minutes of screen time, maybe. So he's got more, but even then, he still dies like nearly immediately after waking up. Yeah, so that's extremely disappointing. But I think of them as Wolfman movies because he's kind of the focal point, especially in House of Frankenstein. House of Dracula is weird, but you know we just talked about that. With House of Frankenstein, it's more about his depression of being the Wolfman, how depressing it is, how hard it is. And that's done with his love interest, the gypsy girl, trying to make him happy again, trying to get a smile out of him. And the thing I love about that is she asks him, do they call you Larry? And he says, they used to. I love that. Because the thing is, in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, they never call him Larry, they just call him Talbot. And that sounds very cold and unemotional. And that just kind of represents the way Larry is in House of Frankenstein. So when someone actually tries to get some levity out of him and calls him Larry, he likes it, but it's also hard for him. So that's one of the most that's probably the most interesting thing to me about House of Frankenstein is the Wolfman story.
I would agree with that. That intrigued me when I was a kid too.
Yeah.
When I was watching it, I always watched it for Frankenstein. I mean, the Wolfman.
Yeah, me too.
Not Frankenstein's monster or Dracula.
Yeah, the Dracula story is really simple.
Yeah.
And the Frankenstein monster, he doesn't get a story. He just shows up and is like, hi, I'm the monster. I'm gonna be chased by villagers.
Exactly like that. that too. No.
Yeah, that was it verbatim.
Hi, I'm a monster. Hi, angry villagers.
Definitely. That's
I love the angry villager cliche now because of these movies.
It's entirely Frankenstein's fault because that's where it started. Yeah, so, anything else you guys want to say about the Wolfman or the following Universal films before we get to...
Gundam style.
Adam's definitely focused.
Adam, mute your mic. One thing I want to bring up right quick is the Wolfman remake. I guess I'm the only one here who actually loved the remake.
Yes, you are. You should be burned for it.
Yeah, you should burn for that.
No. I liked it.
No.
No, I will not be lit on fire.
I will not be burned. Oh, you think the darkness is your ally? You merely adopted.
Totally unrelated to fire, but
You merely adopted the plot. I was born in it.
I don't even think you should say that. You should say the fire rises.
Yeah, there you go. Fire rises.
Fire rises. Time to go mobile. Gorizard, you blasphemous poop shithead.
Poop shit?
How can you possibly like this piece of shit remake?
I'm glad you asked.
First, you will watch the remake of The Wolfman Crash and Burn, and then you will have my permission to die.
Then you have my permission to die.
No, then you have my permission to be burned at the stake.
You will be crucified, and then comes Daimajin to save your ass.
No, Daimajin will just be like, wait, he liked the remake of The Wolfman? Fuck this shit, I'm going back to my rock.
Oh, I'm just gonna take a poop in the woods. Okay, go ahead. I need to shut up.
Alright, Gorizard, go ahead and talk about why you wrongly like the Wolfman remake.
Alright, well, personally why I like the Wolfman remake is because it captures the spirit of the Universal horror films, even though it fails. And they were respectful to the Wolfman design, as opposed to like the 1998 American Godzilla, where they completely changed the look of the character. It's not the character at all. Where in the Wolfman, it's clearly a respect to the Jack Pierce design.
Zanzibar.
Why?
Garza doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
I know.
Adam!
No. Here's the thing. I completely agree with him.
That's the thing too. I do agree with that.
I completely agree with him.
Yeah.
That yes, Joe Johnson and Rick Baker, they have an immense love and affection for the Wolfman.
Right.
Here's where the movie completely fucking sucks. It is so convoluted, and the acting is atrocious that only visually and aesthetically gets carried through. Adam, what were you saying?
How the hell can they make Anthony Hopkins suck?
They did it.
But they succeeded. They succeeded at making Anthony Hopkins suck.
It wasn't that the director was at fault.
No, Joe Johnson is an awesome director.
The problem was the editing. If the editing fails, then everybody fails, including the actors.
No, I think it was the script, because the script is fucking terrible.
I blame the script.
Yeah, I do agree. The script is to blame, but the film went through constant rewrites.
Yeah, and that's the big problem with it.
I know everything about the production of The Wolfman because I've been following it ever since I heard that they were going to remake it. So they were rewriting the script while shooting the film, and I've read the first draft to The Wolfman, and it is similar to the final product, but completely different in every sense. It has more substance and more ground to grasp on, but it's more steady, and it's more paced than the final product that you guys saw.
My biggest problem with it is that it doesn't focus enough on the Wolfman part of it. It's more about this interesting, if not entirely necessary, tragic background of Lawrence Talbot. And by the time it finally gets to the werewolf stuff, it's not very interesting. So I felt like that was all unnecessarily drawn out, and I feel like the werewolf part of it, the interesting part of it, got bogged down by it. So that's my biggest problem with the movie.
Yeah.
Again, that's because the acting sucks. No. But I respect your opinion. I kind of agree, but the movie is just so convoluted. The acting is so piss poor that I can't say with enough confidence that I like it. I just respect it as an attempt to remake a film. And I think that if given the right hands and the correct script, I think that taking what the Wolfman set out to do, it could succeed. So, yeah.
I don't think I have that much passion.
Huh?
I think I don't have that much, sorry. Never mind. I don't think I have that much passion to hate it as much as you do.
Oh, I absolutely despise it. No, okay, here's the thing. In parts, it's a guilty pleasure for me. The Wolfman attack scenes are awesome, if not entirely unrealistic.
Bill, didn't you make a positive review on the Wolfman? Like a long time ago when it came out?
Yeah, okay, here's the thing. When I first saw it, I really liked it, but that was just because I was looking at it visually.
Oh.
When you get down to it, that story makes no sense.
Yeah.
And that's what my new review focuses on, is the fact that the story sucks.
Yeah, they do fail. I do admit they do fail at trying to create illusions and all these metaphors mirroring to, this estranged father and estranged son, trying to give it this Shakespearean story to it. And it does fail because of the rewrites and the editing and the clash with Joe Johnston in the studio. But if you do read the final script, you can kind of see what they were trying to... Not the final script, the first draft. You can kind of see what they were trying to reach across with this film. I do admit that it does lack on several elements. I did felt that even rewatching it again today, I felt that there were a few elements lacking to fully establish the story. And of course, I saw the quote-unquote unrated director's cut.
That's the only version I watch.
It does cover more stuff. Especially the relationship between Lawrence Talbot and his father.
Yeah, it does. And that's one of the best scenes in the movie is that conversation they have.
Right. The table scene.
Yeah, definitely.
So you're probably going to hate me for this, but I prefer the theatrical cut more than the quote-unquote unrated director's cut. Mainly because you get to see the werewolf, or Anthony Hopkins' werewolf, in the first 20 minutes of the film.
But you see it in the first 2 minutes in both cuts.
Well, that's for like 2 minutes. That doesn't really count. But once the first werewolf attack is in the first 20 minutes. Joe Johnson said the reason why they had to push things too fast in the first 30 or 40 minutes is so the audience can get the first transformation quick.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted, so we could focus more on Lawrence Talbot being a werewolf, and in both cuts, I think it fails at that.
Yeah, I think that was kind of a mistake, doing that for the theatrical cut, but I do agree, the film suffers from many things. I don't think it's 100% perfect, but I just love it because they did a kind of like a nice try at paying homage to the Universal Monster films and the Wolfman.
I do agree. Let me just say this. That werewolf is awesome. That design is kick-ass. Rick Baker, you are my god.
I disagree with Nicola. She thinks it looks like a bull without the horns.
Yeah. She's not a Universal Monster fan, and in her opinion means nothing, so no.
Of course.
She's probably listening to this and is probably going to kill me for that, so.
Well, at least she didn't say it looked like the Jim Carrey Grinch,
It kind of does, though. No, I'm kidding.
At times, I did feel like
it does a little bit, right?
Yeah.
In that shot where he's standing behind the fire, he does a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so, anything else you guys want to say about the Wolfman remake?
No.
All right.
One last thing I want to say is that I hated that. Okay, I'm a huge Wolfman fan,
right?
And I expected a lot from this film. It was probably my number 1 or number 2 most anticipated film of 2010. I hated the fact that they completely altered the story. I wanted them to use the simple man bitten by a wolf story from the original.
Yeah, and that's my biggest problem with it, is that it goes into the convoluted backstory.
I blame Benicio del Toro for that, because he said that he's the producer of the film.
Oh, he is? I didn't know that. I thought he was just the actor.
No, he's a big fan of the Wolfman too. He's a big Universal horror film nut like we are, and I don't know why he wanted to make an alternate version of the Wolfman story. I think the original is perfect the way it is, but I guess it's because of that decision. You know, the film went to all the trouble it went to looking the way it did, with production being quote unquote cursed after that. Cursed. I mean, you had the fucking Danny Elfman, then he got fired, then he got rehired, and all of a sudden you had these different cuts between the director and the studio and the writers getting rewrites and all whatnot. I can go on, but
yeah,
you guys see the point?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the movie was flawed with problems in production and is flawed with problems in its execution. So I think that a better remake of The Wolfman should be made. I would love to direct it. Wink, wink, Universal, just in case you're listening.
That's a good one.
What?
That's a good one.
Did you guys know that Mark Romanek was originally set to direct the film before Joe Johnston?
What has he done?
I'm not sure if you guys are big Nine Inch Nails fans, but he directed the music video for The Perfect Drug, and it's basically a Victorian-era music video. But I think that's one of the qualifications he got to direct The Wolfman, but he directed several other films, particularly... I'm looking through the list.
I think the best director for a Wolfman remake could have been John Landis.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, An American Werewolf in London is kind of a remake of The Wolfman, but just a direct remake called The Wolfman, John Landis is your guy.
Right.
Yeah. So I think we're going to move on now to, since we've talked about kind of the Universal Wolfman franchise that spawned off from all their other classic stuff. Oh, wait a minute. Adam, you wanted to talk about Phantom of the Opera, right?
Yeah.
All right, go for it.
Just a little, because I haven't seen it for a while, but it's one of my favorites because of how different it is from the book. This version is really different from the book. Unlike the musical and the 1925 version, where they're actually pretty close to the book, this version strays from the book. Like, the Phantom he was like a former employee of the opera house, and then he gets in a fight and he gets acid thrown into his face. That's cool. That's interesting. It gives the Phantom more of a backstory than the kind of cliched one that we got with the regular one. And Claude Rains. That's all I have to say. Fucking Claude Rains. I don't even really need to explain it. He does absolutely amazing in this movie. And I think his voice is what really carries it. And I think one reason why he was hired to play the Phantom is because he did the voice of the Invisible Man. He played the Invisible Man.
He sure did.
And his voice is really powerful and really carries emotion without having the physical sense there. And I think that was the main reason why he was cast to be the Invisible Man. And here's what I find funny. A lot of people consider this Phantom of the Opera to be the first colored adaptation of it. It's actually not. The original 1925 version was the very first colored one, because there was a, I think, 20-minute segment in that movie where it is in color. It was filmed in color.
Interesting.
And the rest of the movie is filmed in black and white. But, yeah, I just find it really cool. It's ultimately not my favorite. It's actually my least favorite of the Phantom of the Opera adaptations. But it's still not a bad movie. This movie is far from a bad movie. It has its it's moments of suspense. It has some really great action. Well, not action. It has really great acting, and especially from Claude Rains, because from Claude Rains' performance, you really get a tormented soul out of the Phantom, where you really ultimately feel really bad for him at the ending. But the other two, I think, are better. The musical and the 1925 version are ultimately better. But that's really all I had to say about it. It wasn't that much.
Interesting. All right, so since we're kind of done with the classic Universal cycle, the 30s and 40s of the originals, and of course the Wolfman franchise.
I have to get my file.
So now we're going to move on to what is considered to be the end of the Universal classic monster films, the 1954 film, The Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh my god, this is the one where I've seen all the movies in its franchise.
I haven't seen The Creature Walks Among Us.
It's stupid.
Me neither.
It's stupid, don't.
I own the Monster Legacy collection for Creature from the Black Lagoon. I've had it for like 3 years and I still haven't seen The Creature Walks Among Us.
It just sounds stupid.
Stupid.
Well, Adam, since you started us off with Dracula, and we all started off at one point, we're back to you, so why don't you start us off with your thoughts on The Creature from the Black Lagoon?
Oh, so much nostalgia. I watched this around the same time as I watched my all-time favorite movie, King Kong 33. It was right after, because I rented it on VHS, and it freaked me out as a kid. And it captivated me right from the get-go because the movie freaking opens with an explosion. And
the creation of the world, nonetheless.
I know, and it's really cool. And your first sort of appearance of the creature, which is just his hand, it's really well done. And something that I really want to note: this one definitely has the best music score out of all these horror movies, by far. I love the music for this movie. It's really suspenseful in scenes. It's really bombastic in others. It's chaotic in some scenes. It's really well done. I mean, the cinematography is great, especially the underwater stuff. And considering the fact that man who was in the suit actually had to swim around and hold his breath for like 2 minutes straight.
Rico Brown.
And I give that man props for that. I tell Haru Nakajima to do that.
His name is Rico Browning.
Yeah, all right, because there was an interview I was watching with him, and that's how I remember. That's how I heard about it.
Yeah.
And didn't two people play the creature?
Yeah, Rico Browning played the creature in the water scenes, and then Ben Chapman played the creature on land.
Okay. And I thought the acting was, there was a couple flat lines in the movie, but I thought the acting was really okay. I mean, it wasn't anything spectacular. It wasn't anything Oscar worthy, but it was okay. I was at least interested in what the hell was going on.
Yeah, definitely.
And one thing I'd really like to know, this one's really original. This is probably the most original out of all of Universal horror movies because it was an original plot. Like, they created it.
Well, as I said, it is based on a true story.
Oh my god. Like, but...
No, you're right, though. It's the only one that Universal actually created themselves.
And I honestly think this is the most suspenseful one, too. Because
it's got the
I love the atmosphere because these people are trapped on a boat.
Yeah, I agree.
And I just love the creature's theme. And above all, that design, oh my god.
Yeah, so classic.
I know. It just looks so cool. And to me, it really embodies what I think a gill man would look like. That looks like it has its human aspects to it, but it also has fish aspects to it. So I'm like, yeah, that's probably what it would wind up looking something like. It's really cool, and I love how the suit really does look like it can swim around in the water, and it looks, to me, there's only like a couple scenes where I think it's a suit.
I never even, especially as a kid, I never thought it was a suit.
Especially as a kid, right? Even now, I'm so shocked that it's a suit. Like, it looks really, really good. Like, the eyes, too. The eyes, I don't know if they explained it in the audio commentary on your set, but were those fake, or were those the actor's eyes?
They were the actor's eyes.
Really? Okay. All right, then that explains it. Yeah.
I love the eyes in the original suit, because the thing is, the eyes on the original one are the actor's eyes. In the sequels, it's not that way. In Revenge of the Creature and Creature Walks Among Us, even though I haven't seen Walks Among Us, I know this about it, it's fake eyes. They look like shit.
Right, yeah.
The original's eyes are so freaky. They look the most lifelike.
And I also have a Creature from the Black Lagoon t-shirt, and it's amazing, and I wear it every Friday to school.
I have a Creature from the Black Lagoon picture on my wall.
Yeah,
So I saw.
Yeah, it's awesome, and I'm showing it off to everyone. I'm like, I got a Creature from the Black Lagoon print.
And I just think this movie's really well done, and it's the most suspenseful. I think overall it's just the best made, and it's my personal favorite.
Okay then. So before we open up the floor to discussions, Gorizard, what are your overall thoughts of the Creature from the Black Lagoon?
I love the Creature from the Black Lagoon. It's not my most nostalgic memory of the Universal Monsters, but I seen it on AMC, not classic AMC. I saw it on the post-new AMC, and it really struck me. Yeah, I do agree with Chopper. It's very suspenseful. Even watching it as a kid in middle school, I found it very, very suspenseful, even though I was half asleep at 6 in the morning watching it. So, I guess that's all I have to say to it, because Chopper basically covered everything I liked about the Creature from the Black Lagoon. Particularly the design. It's such an awesome and original design.
Yeah. Before we open the floor to discussion, I just want to give my overall thoughts. This, like you guys, very nostalgic movie for me. Wasn't the first one I saw. It was probably the second. I probably saw this movie right after I saw A&C Meet Frankenstein, and just like that film, it really got me into the mood, the way they're shot. And I think that the Creature films are shot a little differently than the classic Universal films. There's not as much
Well, they feel like they're from the 50s.
Yeah, and that's ultimately where the Creature has problems fitting into the classic pool. But that being said, the film has a very similar kind of monster structure to it that does allow it to fit in with the other films. And I think the big reason for this, and this is going to sound so weird coming from me, is that there's no nuclear stuff in it.
Yeah.
And that's what sets it apart from everything else made during this period. It was either aliens or nuclear stuff. And this has none of that. It's not a supernatural creature, and that I'll get into that in a minute, but it's a creature that has mysterious origins and is just kind of there. It doesn't really have an origin. And that's what makes it at least comparable to the classic monsters, Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster, Dracula the Mummy, that it doesn't have an immediate 1-minute origin. It has a progression. So, but more than that, I just love this movie. The score is fantastic. I actually think I prefer the Wolfman theme, but they're both very comparable and definitely on the same ground. I just prefer the Wolfman's a little more. But design-wise, it's great. It looks gorgeous in black and white. The cinematography is very, very powerful. Just especially the underwater stuff, but the above-ground stuff is also very... It's very creepy and moody, and just the sound effects of the jungle are really powerful. I do agree with Adam. The acting isn't really quite up to par with what the other films had. They weren't exactly Oscar-worthy either, but they had actors that were at least giving a depth to their characters. I don't really get that with this cast, and that's not necessarily a problem. I'm not saying that this film demands it, but I'm just saying that that's kind of the other things that makes it feel a little more 50s. And of course, it doesn't hurt that it's got Richard Carlson and Richard Denning, who are two huge B-movie actors in it, so I think that partially adds to it as well.
Yeah.
So now I guess we'll open up the floor to discussions. First things first, do you guys think the creature should be considered part of the classic Universal Monster pool, or do you think it's a league of its own?
It should.
I agree.
With who?
No, wait, okay. Adam, what'd you say? Because I didn't hear you.
I said League of Its Own.
Explain.
Because it doesn't fit with all the other ones. It's like totally separate, and it doesn't even have any continuity with the other ones. And the other ones are clearly all in the same continuity.
Well, not until Frankenstein meets the Wolfman.
Well, right. But then they're all in the the same continuity because...
Well, Dracula, at least Dracula is questionable because they don't bring up the events of Dracula. They bring up the events of Frankenstein and the Wolfman, but no Dracula. So, whatever, you're right. They're not all pulled into the same continuity. The Gillman isn't, at least, so you're right. So, I can see that point. I agree. Here's why I think he fits in. He is an entirely original and creative design that is the starting point and influential point of a host of other monsters. And of course, he's created by Universal. He started the Fishman craze that a lot of monsters are based around. Jaws has roots in Creature from the Black Lagoon. Another Peter Benchley thing, The Creature, obvious. That has roots in Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is a really weird movie about shark people. But it's good. It's just really fucking weird. So I consider it part of it because it's both a very influential monster. It's not supernatural. That's why I think a lot of people don't put it in, because he has a Darwinistic origin with just basically the him being the missing link between man and fish, but the mystique about him, the lore around him that Lucas brings up, that to me allows him to be as big of a giant in folklore as the other monsters. So that's why I pull him in. But also
I just can't put him in continuity, or not continuity. I just can't put him in the same Universal horror list because this is a sci-fi movie, and
I don't agree.
No, it's not. It's a horror movie. You're right. Don't listen to Adam. No, just stop. Don't listen.
Everything he says is wrong. No, I'm kidding.
Pretty much.
It is a little. Well, here's the thing. I don't know if it's outright science fiction. It's got sci-fi elements. Like, of course, again, the creature is not supernatural, but there's not a lot of science fiction stuff in it. But I don't know. I always thought of it as a horror movie first and a science fiction movie dead last. But it does have elements in it, so you're right to a point. Gorizard, you were saying something before, so continue on with that. Something about him being pulled in.
Just listen to me.
Yeah, the reason why I believe the Gillman, or Creature from the Black Lagoon, fits with the other Universal horror monster films is because it's a very unique, distinctive, and significant creature that I believe is on par with the rest of the monsters. Like, when I think of Universal monsters, I think of Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Mummy, and the Gillman, the top 5.
Me too.
Yeah, when I go to Universal Studios, if I ever do go again, I want to see those creatures up there side by side in one of those well, you know what I'm talking about, one of those hall of
one of those like they're all just like they're all like shaking hands, holding each on each other's shoulders.
Something like that. I went through this tour thing where they took you to a tour of the all the sets from the Universal monster films. They had the forest, the Wolfman forest, the Frankenstein lab, the freaking mummy tomb thing and whatnot. Anyways, I just believe that the creature fits with those other monsters because it's part of the family. Even though it's not part of the European horror aspect of it, it's still part of that family.
I agree. So, I agree. I think both of you have valid points. I'm just more with he's always pulled in with them anyway, so I just ultimately I love it when you see like the creature standing next to the Wolfman, and of course he too met Abbott and Costello, which I suppose that's ultimately the judgment point. Did they meet Abbott and Costello? And he did in their TV series, where he showed up briefly and he met them. So that's kind of the judging point. Did he meet Abbott and Costello? So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was in their TV series briefly.
That's funny.
Yeah. Isn't it though? Because it's like, you're only considered part of the family if you met Abbott and Costello.
Right. I didn't know that. that. So.
Frankenstein's monster, Wolfman, Dracula, Invisible Man, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, kinda.
You're right. I found that video.
What?
I found the video.
Of what?
Abbott and Costello meet the creature.
Oh yeah. It's awesome. Anyway, so do you guys have anything else you want to say specifically about Creature from the Black Lagoon?
No.
Yes, I don't think Creature from the Black Lagoon should be remade. It's something that should be kept on its own.
Yeah. Of course,
I mean, I can already picture what the remake would be. It would be just another gore-fested, generic chased by a monster film.
I don't even know who's working on the remake, so...
Yeah, I've totally lost interest in it.
Yeah, because if it turns out that someone who's like a really big fan of... Here's how you need to approach remakes, is you just need to make them live for another generation. You need to approach like Peter Jackson does with remakes.
Yeah, I agree.
Peter Jackson, his mission whenever he remakes a movie is not to best the original. It's not to best the original, it's to make it live on for another generation. And yeah, I just can't picture Creature from the Black Lagoon being done well in a remake.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I've kind of come around on it a little bit lately because, I don't know, you have to have kind of a different story, because the thing with Creature is that it's got such a simple premise that if you remake it, it's either going to be too similar or completely different and unrecognizable. That's what I find difficulty with it being remade. So you have to do something that's really interesting and original and also faithful to the original that you have to come up with for me to fully approve of a remake. So I'm with you guys.
Right. Well, to be fair, Gary Ross is directing it, I believe.
I do not know who that is.
The director of The Hunger Games.
Oh, what?
I already like it.
I haven't seen that, so I don't know. Nor have I read the book, so I don't know if that's good or not. But I don't know. That doesn't immediately scream Creature from the Black Lagoon to me.
Well, he also directed Pleasantville and Seabiscuit. Those are the only directorial credits that he has.
So is Tobey Maguire going to play the creature?
No.
I hope not. Whoa, wow, love me. Okay, so do you guys have anything else you want to say about Creature from the Black Lagoon?
I guess we're done.
Alright, so now we're going to move on to our top 3 favorite Universal monster movies. And if it's hard to pick, you guys can have ties. So I guess I'll start out. This is kind of hard for me to pick my top 3, but I ultimately came down on it this way. My top 3 are number 3, The Wolfman. No. Number 3, Bride of Frankenstein. Bride of Frankenstein is just a really crazy, awesome, deep exploration of the Frankenstein monster and of the Frankenstein story. And it's overall really entertaining and visually awesome movie. So it's just James Whale going crazy, and I love James Whale, so that was enough to hook me in. 2 is The Wolfman, and The Wolfman, we already explained it, so just number 2 is The Wolfman for me, just because it's an awesome movie and just very nostalgic. My number 1 favorite Universal monster movie is The Invisible Man. Especially just recently, I have been obsessed with The Invisible Man, and I'm not entirely sure why, but that movie is just awesome. It's got in my opinion, it has the most original story of all of them. Because it's just like, it's a guy who is invisible going around murdering people.
Based on a book by H.G. Wells.
Sorry?
It's based on a book by H.G. Wells, who also wrote War of the Worlds and Empire of the Ants, just to name a few, and The Time Machine.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, of the Universal monsters, it's got one of the most original plots, in my opinion. Just like, I like the idea of an invisible man running around murdering people. But I don't know, just Claude Rains' performance is just amazing. He really carries the movie. He is the definitive Invisible Man for me. It's also really faithful to the book, surprisingly. I mean, it does deviate a little bit, but it's mostly just for changes from a book to film. But especially the first 15 minutes, almost page for page the book. So those are my top 3 favorites: Bride of Frankenstein, The Wolfman, The Invisible Man. So those are my top 3 favorites. So Gorizard, your top 3 favorite Universal monster movies.
All right, I'll start from number 3. My number 3 favorite is Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. Though technically not a direct, well, yes, it is a direct sequel to the Wolfman, but not entirely. It's a crossover film, and it's very weird to make a crossover film for a sequel, but it's still a sequel nonetheless. And I think it's very, very good, and you get to see more of the Wolfman this time in the sequel than in the original.
Yeah, you do.
And plus, you got the most awesome fight scene between the Frankenstein's monster and the Wolfman, which is the highlight of the film.
Definitely.
My number 2 is Frankenstein, the original, mainly because I got the most nostalgia for that film. It was probably my first Universal monster film watching after Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. So basically my first solo Universal monster, and I have so much nostalgia for it because, come on, it's Boris Karloff and the Jack Pierce makeup. It's a legendary film. And The Wolfman is my favorite, number 1 favorite, because I love werewolves and I love Lon Chaney's performance, and it's a great film.
Indeed.
Should have been more detailed.
No, it's fine. We already talked about them, so I say that what we said backs it up. So, Adam, your top 3 favorite Universal monster movies, and again, you can have ties. So.
No, I don't need them because I know them right off my head.
Go for it.
3 is Frankenstein, 2 is The Invisible Man, and 1 is Creature from the Black Lagoon. Simple as that.
Awesome.
We didn't even talk about The Invisible Man.
We can quick if you want to. I just didn't think that. I mean, he's in the Universal pool of monsters, but he's not one of the big 5.
One of the main ones.
If we had to pull from the big 5, then that number 2 spot would be Frankenstein. The number 3 spot would probably wind up being the Wolfman. But
yeah, not pulling from the big 5. Just overall, that's why The Invisible Man is my favorite. But just as a monster, I don't consider him to be part of the big 5.
Right.
So yeah. So the final thing we're going to discuss is Universal as a whole, Universal monsters as a whole. But more than that, the main point of this video I want to be, why exactly are these movies so inundated into pop culture? Why is Halloween kind of defined by them? Like, for example, when you think of icons of Halloween, most people think of the Universal monsters. They think of mainly Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman. Like, the only other one that's not a Universal monster that some people think of is the Headless Horseman, but mainly people think of Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman. And they think of the versions created by Universal. Why do you guys think that is? And do you think it's because of these movies? Because of the what do you guys think it is? And there doesn't necessarily have to be an answer. Just kind of what is your guys' take on it?
I believe that it's just part of the Halloween spirit. The general population believes that, Halloween is supposed to be like some scary thing, a scary holiday to dress up, go to people's houses, scare people, and get their candy. And these characters from these films are associated with that element of horror. They're not that scary, but somehow they're the ones who set the standard for horror.
I think it's partially because, and this is going into kind of what we were talking about with the Wolfman, I think it's because the look of Halloween, the gothic, Victorian age castles, mad scientist labs, spooky forests kind of settings, the fog, all that cool stuff. And that came with these movies, The Wolfman, Frankenstein, Dracula. And I think that it's because of that that scenery that we associate these monsters with Halloween, because they were born in that. And more than that, I think it's because we don't live in that. So for one day every year, we can pretend that we can live in this fantastic, creepy, gothic world of gods and monsters. And that's why I think we associate them with Halloween, is because they create this interesting, visually rich, and spooky scenery, and they themselves as characters are interesting in that scenery. So that's what I think it is.
I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about. I just do it for the candy.
No, but Adam, seriously.
We're trying to be preachy about Halloween, like Stan and Kyle from South Park.
And you're just like, fuck it, it's the candy.
Fuck it, I do it for the candy. What the hell are you talking about?
No, but Adam, seriously, why do you think the Universal monsters are so associated with Halloween?
Oh my god, one of the toughest questions I've ever been asked.
I know, and as I said, there doesn't necessarily have to be an answer, just kind of what is your take on it? What is your immediate thoughts?
Again, I do it for the candy, but actually no, I don't do it for the candy. I do it just because I like Halloween's the one time where I get to go all geek out and just do whatever the fuck I want, and it's okay. But
there's also Comic-Con.
Yeah, exactly, man. I got to do that last Sunday.
You realize I live up here and near the Canadian border.
They have to have something there.
No. Well, we have the Snobs Film Festival, which I'm entering Compound of Chaos in there. To get it done. But that's it. But I don't really know. I don't know why. It's there. It's just, ever since those movies were made, they've been played on TV constantly. People know what they are because they've heard, people talk about them. I mean, they're referenced everywhere. You got TV shows like The Simpsons, Family Guy referencing all these movies, more specifically The Simpsons. And people just sort of, they don't even watch these movies. They know them for stuff like The Simpsons. They know them stuff like from magazines and stuff like that.
Frankenstein, big part of it?
Yeah.
Basically, the films are like a huge impact on pop culture.
Yeah. It's like almost like the parodies define the way we look at them.
Yep. That is why I can't take the Joker on The Dark Knight seriously anymore.
Bane's becoming that.
Yeah, a little bit.
But that doesn't bother me. But anyway, I don't want to make this about the Joker. Which is funny because the inspiration for the Joker was The Man Who Laughs, and that was Jack Pierce's first makeup gig. Interesting. Anyway, so, is there anything else you guys want to say about Universal as a whole? What do you guys think why do you guys love it so much? What do you think it is?
Universal is the only respectable movie studio still working today.
And Warner Brothers?
I don't agree at all, but alright.
Warner Brothers produces some shit, too.
So does Universal. Every studio produces shit, but, I mean...
Mainly Fox.
Mainly Fox. Yep.
And Fox is not a network. Just wanted to point that out.
Fox hasn't produced a decent movie in a few years.
Wait a minute, which Fox?
Is there several Foxes?
Yes, there's like a million Foxes.
I thought it was one single giant corporation.
No.
Now we're completely off topic, off company, in fact.
Completely off topic. Back to the Universal monsters.
So why do you? For me, I'll say my reasons. It's the atmosphere. It's the way.
Wait a minute.
What?
We're talking about Universal monsters? God damn! What the hell am I doing here?
I should be off talking about the Paramount monsters, the Avengers. No. So For me, at least, it's because of the atmosphere. It's because of the fog. It's because of the gothic scenery. That's why I associate it with Halloween, and that's why I love them so much. It's just the way they look, the interesting visuals, the interesting characters. That's why I love the Universal monsters.
I love them because I love monsters, and I'm a huge geek, so...
Yeah, they're
naturally, a geek has to love them.
They're a geek's horror movie. Horror movies.
Yeah, geeks movies.
Yeah, they sure are. So is there anything else you guys would like to say about the Universal monsters?
Oh my god, that's so weird.
The Blu-rays.
Ooh, go for it.
You guys heard that they re-released all the Universal Monster films into a single Blu-ray pack that's over like $200?
I'm getting it.
That's too much.
That's way too much.
I will pay it.
No, I'm not. $100, you have the decision of the Universal Monsters Blu-rays, the James Bond 50 collection Bluray, or
getting
the Star
both of
Wars
those.
Blu-rays.
That can go fuck itself.
That's money up the ass.
$400.
Well, I want the Star Wars Blu-ray because of the special features, and I want to see it in Blu-ray for the first time.
$400 for James Bond and the Universal monsters.
There's your Christmas present right there.
That's all I'm getting for Christmas.
Yeah, screw you guys. I know exactly what I want for Christmas.
All I want for Christmas is my tooth. We're talking about Halloween, damn it. So,
I know what I want for Halloween is the candy.
That's what I want for Halloween. That and my fucking Invisible Man costume, which I still haven't gotten.
Fuck can you get the Invisible Man costume? You just be like... Oh, I'm taking it way too literally.
No, I'm gonna be the Claw Rains, the bandages and stuff.
Yeah, I'm just gonna walk around
naked and pretend I'm invisible. There's this great spoof in the movie Amazon Women on the Moon, and there's this great spoof scene where it's basically making fun of the scene in The Invisible Man where Jack Griffin takes off all his clothes and runs around the bar.
Yeah.
And it's like the invisibility thing didn't work. So everyone's like, oh wow, I wonder who's causing this. It's hilarious. So yeah. Where were we going with this? So I suppose that'll ultimately wrap us up with the Universal monsters are inundated into pop culture. They are Halloween. They define Halloween. They define the way horror films are characterized. They define the way we look at each of these characters, and they define the way we look at pop culture in terms of horror. They define the horror genre and the monster genre. So I think that'll be a good closing segment for us. So thank you very much for listening and for this ZGC spotlight on the Universal monsters. Thank you very much for listening. And on the next episode of ZGC Monthly Reviews, we're going to be taking a look at a movie that Adam will be very excited for. We're going to be taking a look at The Green Slime from 1968.
I can't wait for that. That movie is so good.
Okay, so we'll be taking a look at that film in November. So thank you very much for listening for this special Halloween edition of ZGC Monthly Reviews. I hope you guys all have a safe and happy Halloween. I'm Zazubar.
I'm Gorizard.
I'm Adam.
Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you guys all soon for a review of The Green Slime. Farewell.
Bye.
Oh wait, we can't finish yet. Gorizard's got to pee. Alright, so while he's peeing, Adam, I'm going to introduce a new segment here on ZGC that we're going to call Random Conversation. So basically, here's what we're going to do. You're going to throw out a random conversation topic, and we're just going to discuss it until he comes back. So go! First thing that comes to mind.
Facebook posts. That's the first thing that pops in my mind. that's scary. That's the first thing that pops to my mind.
There's something wrong with you, no.
Something wrong with me.
You post too many.
Yeah, I do.
You cover up my homepage. No, Facebook posts are annoying because sometimes you see them and sometimes you don't. Because Facebook, when you open it, goes immediately to the overall homepage, and then you got to go to your profile. But if you're friends with someone, I would say that it should pop up on your profile.
No, I'd say it'd be the other way around. Because my homepage, yeah, I post a lot of shit, but you know what else I'm finding that is helping with this? I can fucking vent on Facebook, okay? I can't vent in normal other cases, you know? So I can at least post shit and be like, hey, listen to this, or hey, yeah, that's pretty cool. Or I can be like, oh God, I fucking hate everything. Which I do quite frequently.
Very true. He's not lying.
I hate everything, but I don't know. There's just certain posts that make me angry. It's the posts that usually have, you know, like the half-burnt body or like the horribly mutilated girl.
Yeah, I've been seeing that a lot lately. What the hell is the deal with that?
Like, fuck.
Well, before we get too much into that, Gorizard is back. So, Gorizard, you just missed the new segment here on ZGC, which is random conversation while one of us is gone.
Well, one takes a pee, random conversation.
Yeah, that's
okay, so speaking of that, guess what, you guys?
What?
I have to pee.
Alright, so we're going to have a random conversation.
Random conversation again.
Alright, so Adam, you go do that, and Gorizard, throw out a random... The first thing that pops to your mind, random conversation topic, go!
Asians.
Wow, they are. They make some hell of movies.
I'm talking about the women, but yeah, the movies too.
Gorizard, go ahead and vent about your Asian women.
Oh, speaking of Asians, have you got a chance to see Ip Man yet?
No, I have to buy it from Walmart so I can review it for you because I know I said I promised I'd do that, so I gotta buy that for my local. There's a sequel?
Yeah.
Is it good?
Think of it as the Chinese version of Rocky 4.
Oh!
But yeah, it's good anyway. It's good still, but the first one is the best because it has much more. Just more than the second one.
What's
the second one is kind of like more of an action film.
Oh yeah.
The first film is kind of more of a historical film trying to be accurate while at the same time trying to be entertaining. But it's a terrific film nonetheless.
What exactly is the premise?
For the first film?
Yeah.
Basically, Grandmaster Yip Man, that's how you actually pronounce his name, despite how you spell it, is basically he's struggling during the World War II when the Japanese have occupied Shohan, China. It's one of those struggling stories during World War II of the oppression by the Japanese from the Chinese's point, except it's from the point of a martial artist who's teaching his fellow civilians how to defend themselves against the Japanese.
So it's kind of like Defiance, but with the Japanese and Chinese.
Did you guys talk about Gundam style? Or Gundam style?
I don't know, Gundam style.
Believe it or not, for some reason...
Gundam style.
Say it quick, because then I want to get back on topic, because I think our listeners are leaving at this point.
You guys are talking about Asians, and Gundam style is amazing, so...
I don't think Zazabar has seen it.
What?
You haven't lived.
What? What haven't I seen?
Well, I haven't lived either, but I've at least lived a little bit more than Zazabar has, apparently.
What haven't I seen that doesn't allow me to live?
I'll post it on your Facebook page.
What haven't I seen?
Trust me, you will not comprehend it. But
it's the most amazing 4 minutes of your life.
It's unexplainable. It has to be seen by your eyes.
It makes fun of Michael Bay. It makes fun of everything. And I have to say, I know the dance.
Okay then. So now that none of us are peeing, we're gonna get back to the topic.
None of us are taking their piss breaks. The intermission. Welcome to the middle of the film. Welcome to the middle of the film.
Okay, so let's get back on topic. Back to the Wolfman.